To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. Is he being treated fairly? Or, as he and his supporters argue, is he the victim of a, quote, witch hunt? I hear both arguments all the time about Donald Trump. 4 indictments, including the classified documents case centered around Mar-a-Lago, make it a good time for perspective. My guests today include a former federal prosecutor and former FBI agent. That former agent, well known to many of you. He's our guest and analyst oftentimes, Stuart Kaplan, now a defense attorney. I thank you for your time, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Share your perspective. Is it fair? 4 indictments. People ask me that all the time. Your thoughts, your perspective.
You know, Mike, the cornerstone of our democracy is rooted in our federal Constitution. And within our Constitution are those principles of separation of powers, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. It really, those lines, those principles are blurred right now. And I always tell a story of my dad saying, you know, early on in my FBI career, the government can always get the right guy, but it doesn't necessarily mean they got him right.
How do you think the lines are blurred in the case of the former president?
Well, it's the first time in modern history that we've seen leaks come out of our Supreme Court of the United States. And certainly just in this past week in Fulton County, Georgia, when it seems that the grand jury secrecy or the secrecy of keeping those proceedings secret, everybody knew play by play what was happening during the progression of the presentation. That's troubling to me because you have elected officials that are pandering to a certain class of our population with respect to trying to preserve what they campaigned on, and that's troubling and concerning to me.
When you say a certain class of people who were against Trump and didn't want to vote for him and would not support him, and you feel they're targeting that, and you're talking in this case about the DA out of Fulton County, Fonnie Willis.
You know, I just think it's unacceptable that someone who's running for public office, and certainly the lead law enforcement official in Fulton County, the district attorney, when she is campaigning and saying, if you elect me, I promise that I'm going to go after the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, that's unacceptable. That's un-American.
Let's take it with Mar-a-Lago case, for instance, classified documents. Others argued it's pretty cut and dried. He had documents he should not have had. He knew he should not have had them. He should have turned them over. He had the chance to do so, did not. And that he's not above the law, and he has to be prosecuted just as you or I would be in a similar circumstance. Let's take that as an example. Fair or unfair?
Completely unfair. And for the obvious reason that historically, presidents of the United States, when they have left office, have people that box up their office. I mean, let's be honest, Donald Trump is not packaging his own office and loading the moving trucks. And so just in and of itself, he's not aware of what they're putting into these boxes. But more importantly, again, we should not have 2 systems of justice, or the scales of justice should always be balanced.
And how are they unbalanced here?
Because no former president has ever been prosecuted with respect to taking presidential documents and taking them home with them. And just by way of example, we now know then Vice President Biden, not only in 1, 2, but 3 separate locations, has documents going back 30, 40 years. And so when you see the disparate of treatment, that in and of itself should say that there should have been a declination, meaning the United States Attorney's Office, the Attorney General, should have said, it may be troublesome, maybe we need to take some internal corrective action, but we're not going to prosecute a former president of the United States. That's ridiculous.
The former president of Washington, D.C., the indictment there, the argument is that he supplied the match and sent them on their way to the Capitol, and if he didn't outright ask for them to storm it, he certainly sent them on their way, and that he should be prosecuted for that, according to his critics. Others have argued, and you've talked to me about this, you think the thread through all of this is where does free speech begin and end, and it's a fundamental issue at play here. Your take on the Washington case?
Again, a perfect example. Look, Mike, one of our most fundamental constitutionally protected rights is our First Amendment to be free to speak our minds, to speak our opinions, and any time that a politician, in my opinion, gets behind a podium or makes a public statement, we shouldn't have to now say that we can use that as the segue to go after him, either because he lied or because maybe it cut against the grain, that not everybody is in agreement with him. In my opinion, what Donald Trump said after the election was absolutely 100% protected speech. I will tell you, though I'm not going to advocate that if a politician gets behind the podium and starts to incite people to bear arms and go carry out some harm, which by the way, Mike, when we go back and we look at when Black Lives Matters broke out and there was all this rioting and destruction of public property, we had many elected officials that were stoking the fire and throwing gasoline on the fire and agitating and instigating people to go out and destroy public property.
Where are we as a country right now? You've expressed concerns about what you think's happening in the agency you once served as an FBI agent for some 15 years. Where are we, and what is your cautionary note to our audience?
So when I look back and I think about my days in the FBI, and I want everybody to understand, the men and women of the FBI, each and every day, they're incredible people. They do incredible work. But the climate, the atmosphere at headquarters in Washington, D.C., the integrity has been eroded. The optics, politicized, weaponized. Mike, when we saw Jim Comey, the then director of the FBI, come out during the Hillary Clinton situation with the emails, and he took it upon himself because Loretta Lynch, who at the time was the Attorney General, kicked that can down the road to him. And he made a statement, or made statements, with respect to why the FBI was not going to prosecute that case. That was the first time publicly you could appreciate that this FBI was no longer recognizable and certainly going down the wrong path.
I want you, we'll have another perspective now. It's a conversation that you and I have had, we'll continue to have. I appreciate your perspective on this topic. We have another view right now, another perspective. My next guest, David Weinstein, former federal prosecutor, now defense lawyer in Miami.
So my thoughts on all of this is that it is certainly fair, and it's what the justice system has been set up to do. I've been on both sides of the system, in both state and federal court, and the object of the system is for people to get a fair trial if the government believes that there were crimes committed. The burden's on the government to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's a high burden. And the people who decide whether or not someone who is accused of committing a crime is guilty or not guilty are a jury of that person's peers. And that's the way our justice system has been set up for over 200 years. And most of the time, it works the way it's supposed to work. With regard to this being a political versus a legal perspective, it's not about politics. People have differing opinions. People belong to different political parties. When I was an assistant United States attorney, I worked for 5 different U.S. attorneys. Some of them were part of the same political party that I was, and some of them weren't. But although political parties might designate what a particular agenda item is for the Department of Justice, the job of the Department of Justice is to do just that, to seek justice. They're apolitical. And that's why the system has, for the most part, worked. Looking at the 4 different indictments now currently pending against the former president, you have one brought by a district attorney in Manhattan that accuses him of not keeping accurate records and falsifying information. And there was evidence presented to a grand jury there, and an indictment was returned, and he'll have to answer that indictment. With regard to the 2 sets of federal charges, one brought down here in South Florida deals with the unlawful retention of classified documents. Those documents contain some of the most sensitive secrets about our country and impact the way that we defend ourselves and our borders. The other case, the one brought in the District of Columbia, goes to the heart of our democracy and the heart of our system, free and fair elections. And the allegations there are that the former president interfered with those free elections, attempted to influence the outcome, and deprived every voter of their right to participate in the election. And finally, the case that was most recently brought in Georgia expands on that and includes a number of other individuals who allegedly assisted the former president in interfering with the election process. And those charges are broad and sweeping, and the allegations in all of these indictments are contained in the public record, and people can look at them themselves and draw their own conclusion. But what's at the heart of all this is not politics, despite what some may think. At least from my perspective, what's at the heart of this is defending our system. And of all of these cases, perhaps the two that are the most important are the case brought in the District of Columbia and the case brought in Georgia. Because in those cases, the allegations are that the former president and others struck at the heart of our democracy, a free election and a peaceful transition of power. I'm not sure how anyone can think that politics drove those charges. It's the system and the attack on the system that brought those charges.
Sir, can our system, our legal and political system, hold under this extraordinary historic weight and tension?
I hope that it can. Certainly, there are people now outside the judicial system who are attacking the people inside the system, and that has to stop. Our system works because judges are fair and impartial arbiters of the law. Jurors decide whether the facts support the law and whether or not the government's case is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And as far as our democracy goes, when we all go out to vote, whether it's a local election, whether it's the presidential election, whether it's senators, congressmen, congresswomen, we are all going out and putting our voice there and putting our pen to the paper and voting for who we think should serve. And at the heart of this, at least in the United States, is a peaceful transition of power. When you win, you are declared the winner because that's the way the people voted. And when you lose, for the most part, you concede your loss. If in fact there was something wrong with the way that the vote was tabulated and when it occurred, there are recounts, people evaluate the system, and then when it's over, and the winner takes over or remains in power, and the person who lost concedes. And so we have to have respect for both the judicial and the democracy that we live in. And so whether it survives, well, that depends on all of us. We have to respect the results of the judicial process and live with them. And we have to respect the results of the way our democracy works, where each of us has the right to vote.
Differing perspectives this morning for your consideration, as always. Up next, the Roundtable with Brian Crowley.